When you live with brain injury, it's really easy to feel alone and misunderstood. And that's true for everyone, no matter where you're at on your journey. Today, we're going to be talking with some veterans about finding hope. And we're continuing our Veterans Day conversations. Whether you've been in the military, you have a loved one who has, or even if you don't have personal connection, we hope that these conversations will be encouraging to you to know that you are not alone in your struggles and there's always hope.
There is always hope, and you are not alone.
Hi, I'm Cristabelle Braden, and this is my brain injury podcast, Hope Survives. This is an uplifting podcast to bring hope to your darkest days. As a survivor of traumatic brain injury and multiple concussions and re-injuries, I know what it's like to struggle to find hope. I don't want anyone to feel as alone as I did, and that's why over 10 years ago, I started an online community called Hope After Head Injury, which has now launched into a nonprofit organization called Hope Survives. Hope Survives envisions a world in which every survivor of brain injury and every member of their family are seen, loved, heard, valued, supported, uplifted, and never alone. This podcast is an extension of that, and I'd love to invite you to join along as we explore the realities of life with brain injury, with messages of encouragement, interviews with doctors and professionals, and survivor and family stories. No matter where you're at on your journey, there is always hope.
With a little hope, you can make it through today. With a little faith, someday you'll get through the pain. Just a little love is enough to light the way through your darkest night. Hope survives. A little faith, a little love. Hope survives.
Hey friends, welcome back to Hope Survives podcast. We are here today continuing our Veterans Day conversations. I am back with our co-host, Jeremiah. Hey, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, Cristabelle, thanks for having me back.
It has been so fun having a co-host on these two episodes. I've not done it before, but you're making me rethink this whole podcast thing because it's so much more fun. I just really appreciate you coming here.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to be here, especially just exploring these conversations. It's great.
For those who maybe didn't catch the last episode, can you just quickly introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, I am Hope Survives communications intern this semester, but I also double hat as active duty Navy person. I am a corpsman in the Navy. I've been in for the last 8 years. So these conversations working in medical are interesting to me. Not only interesting, they're important for me to know and to help me spread this information. So I'm very excited to be here. I'm very excited to learn more about what veterans are going through, not just active duty and brain injury.
So you said you're a corpsman in the Navy. For those who might not be familiar with that, can you just describe a little bit about what you do there?
Yeah, so a corpsman has a wide range of what they can actually do. Most people would just kind of break it down and just say medical. Corpsmen don't like to be called medics, but if you need an easier way to say it, you can just say we're medics. But we can do a stretch of whoever we're working under, all the way from working just in a regular internal medicine clinic all the way to working in the ER or working beside surgeons, not doing the surgery, but working beside surgeons, even working on some hospital wards. If you've been to a big hospital or military hospital, you've probably been around a lot of corpsmen. And so we like to uphold a great standard when it comes to medicine.
That's incredible, Jeremiah. And thank you for your service and just the way that you just see people and, show them that they're not alone, even through your work there. It's admirable. And we're so thankful to have you on the Hope Survives team here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
When we did your interview for the internship, I remember just being really struck that you shared that you were interested in interning in Hope Survives, not just because you needed an internship for your degree. Of course, that's part of it, right? But also that you've seen brain injury in the military and you know how much brain injury impacts those in the military. And you wanted to learn more about brain injury and how you could help them. Since you've been working with Hope Survives, I would love to know, what have you learned about brain injury in this time, and just what's your overall impression of things that you've learned?
I could get really into the weeds on this. I'm gonna focus on like the main things that I've learned about brain injury and the I would want to say different aspects. Like it's no longer just brain injury to me. The emotional and physical aspects of even the mental aspects of how people are going through brain injury, the symptoms that they have, how they're treated kind of afterwards, maybe by their community, or even having trouble finding a community afterwards. There's so many things in brain injury. The word invisible gets kind of used a lot, and I feel like that's absolutely accurate because a lot of the things that somebody with a brain injury would go through is, I would say, invisible to the human eye. You need to talk to them, you need to dig deeper, you need to understand, and then you will understand that injury. And then also you have the flip side of it. Like you said, I've seen a lot of people who've had a brain injury. There's a whole family aspect to it, and if you ignore that, it's going to be like a lot of trouble down the road. You know, there are people who are supporting people with brain injuries. There are families who are couples who are trying to manage building a long-lasting relationship with somebody who has a brain injury, or after they have experienced a brain injury. There's so much that's involved in it, and I'm learning about all these aspects. And then the other podcasts, and today just learning more about veterans with brain injuries, the amount of ways that brain injuries can happen, and the fact that most people aren't even aware that they have a brain injury. They just get treated for these random symptoms that the doctor would think is like, oh, you're randomly having this or that. It's like, no, this person has had a brain injury. They've just been exposed to these things. There's so many ways that the brain injury would start off. It's shocking. And so I would say in those three aspects, family, mental and physical, and then even the start of how you would get a brain injury is, I it's been so educational for me, and I hope people are listening and it could be educational for them. So we just know, because the more informed we are, the better off we'll all be as a community, as a society, as people trying to take care of each other and help each other make it through.
Well said, Jeremiah. Well said. And I'm so thankful to have you, especially as co host on these conversations, because you can ask questions and share from a perspective that I just don't have. And I'm so grateful for you for coming on here. And so we're excited to talk to Scottie and Vinnie today, two more veterans. We're about to record it. And so you guys are hearing this in live time. We haven't had the conversations yet, but we're so excited to do so and to just hear their stories and the way that they have encountered their military service through and their brain injury, and how they've uncovered what has happened in brain injury. Every story is different, and that's what's so important, and why we have so many episodes, and we're just all trying to just make it through, right? We're all just trying to get through. And so before we move on to the next section, I want to thank our sponsor, the Functional Neurology Center. Dr. Schmo and the team at the FNC have so generously sponsored Hope Survives this year. Their personalized neuro recovery programs offer hope for those suffering from brain injuries, dysautonomia, vestibular, chronic pain, stroke, movement dysfunction, developmental disorders, PPPD, FND, and complex post-concussion. Thank you to the Functional Neurology Center. You can find more about them at the fnc.com. It's also, of course, always in the show notes. We're so thankful. So before we get to this next section, Jeremiah, my question for you, what have you learned from having these veterans conversations, and what are you hoping our audience takes away from this?
From these veteran conversations, I really want to touch on the fact that, yes, there's a different lifestyle between a veteran and somebody who has not been in the military. The things that are highlighted inside of those are veterans, especially those who are dealing with brain injury, are kind of lean towards isolation a lot because the military culture of emotions or medical may not support that person fully. So what I've heard so far is there's been a big lean on isolation, people not understanding and being alone. And so when they leave the service, that happens to be it's almost like a magnifying glass has been put on that. And so I would just hope that people learn, I want to say, just to talk, just to ask questions to people. Hey, have you gotten seen for this? Do you have a community you can go to for this thing? Are there people who are helping you out right now? Like what are you going through? You know, and these are basic questions that you can ask to anybody who's not even a veteran, but specifically what my mind has shifted to, oh, what do I need to worry about when it comes to somebody who's been through military service or who is a veteran, and those who have gone through brain injury, you know, who have been through the service? What are the common, I want to say, pitfalls that they might fall into? So that's what I hope people learn today is how to help that community instead of being like, oh well, I don't know what to do with them because they just kind of figure I've never been in service. I don't know how to talk to them and stuff. It's like, well, now you do. Now we're opening that door for those conversations.
I love that. Opening the door, getting curious, asking why, asking what's going on. I mean, that's just a general principle we can take to anyone in life. So many times we assume that we know, or we assume that we don't know, that we just kind of draw back. But being curious and asking why, and just like seeing somebody, right? That's part of our vision statement for Hope Survives, that everyone would be seen and know that they're not alone. But part of that is being seen and being recognized. So all right, let's go ahead and get to these conversations. I'm excited to have them. Thank you again, Jeremiah, for being here. We are so thankful to have you part of the team here this semester.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Let's get into it.
Hey, we are so excited to be back here with our Veterans Day conversations. We've got Vinnie and Scottie here to share their stories with us, as well as Jeremiah here as co-host. So we're going to start by asking them to share a short summary of your time in service and your journey with brain injury. So Vinnie, welcome to Hope Survives podcast. Thanks for being here. Would you go ahead and start us out?
Well, thank you, Cristabelle. Thank you, Jeremiah. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and having myself and Scottie on. A little bit about myself, Vinnie Morales. I'm an Army veteran, sapper, 12 Bravo, 13 years total in service, 8 on the active duty side, and due to some math that I can't do, 7 or some on the reserve time side. Had a couple of deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, and throughout that time frame, picked up a couple concussions, 6 or 7 in total, and understanding what it's been like to live life beyond the blast.
Thank you so much for sharing. And you have done some work in helping others that are going through it. Do you want to share a little bit about the organization that you've been a part of?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So after my time in service and kind of the standard issue journey that we all get one way, shape, form, or another, and the backside, I've been able to embark on a healing journey over the last decade, and a part of that has been community, has been my brother and sister veterans, and that led me to the gentleman that I co-founded an organization with, a Veterans Community Project. In 2016, we had a concept of tiny homes living and saying yes to our brothers and sisters before we said no. Throughout my healing journey, Veterans Community Project really allowed me to focus my energy and my TBI and concentrate where I needed to be to enable to make this mission come to fruition. Now, 10 years into it, we are a national nonprofit housing veterans in Kansas City, Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri, Longmont, Colorado, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and projects in Milwaukee and Arizona as we speak.
That's incredible. That's incredible work. First of all, thank you for your service, and thank you for the work that you've done to help veterans and just being a voice of hope. I love it. I love it so much. I'm so glad to meet you and to know you. So, Scottie, we want to welcome you to Hope Survives podcast. Thank you for coming here today. Would you share a bit about your journey? Yeah.
Yeah. I am Marine Corps. I did 18 years. I was combat medically retired. Spent the majority of my time in the infantry. Most notably, spent the majority of my time as an infantry platoon sergeant. Did 7 total deployments. 5 of them were to Southeast Asia area of operations, and twice I deployed to Ramadi. That's pretty much all I want to talk about with my military service. Everybody's got the same story. You go over the sandbox, you do some things, you come back. Yeah, I'm proud of my service. I'm glad I served, but I am Scottie now. I'm fully reintegrated into the civilian sector.
Well, thank you for sharing some of your story. Can you share a little bit of your journey with PTSD and brain injury?
Sure. So I had a traumatic childhood, to put it lightly. And in the Marine Corps, I thought at times the wires were disconnected or not connected correctly. And I struggled at times. I was great tactically, strategically. That wasn't an issue. It was my libo days where I was getting a little off the rails. And my first combat tour, it was Ramadi in 2004, and it was like the Wild Wild West. I mean, we're dropping 500-pound bombs. We've got everything at our disposal that we can use. And starting in 2006, my second Ramadi deployment, I just got my anger was out of control. I like to call myself a Molotov cocktail, and that's how I was, quick to get angry. So it actually started there with a corpsman prescribing some medication for me that helped. But once I got back stateside, it became very evident that I needed help. And so it began there with Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton, seeing different providers there. And it became evident towards the latter end because I was always fighting to get back to deploying status. And it became evident at a certain point where the doctor gave me an option. He said, hey, we're going to take you off the medication for 30 days because you can't be on this medication when you're deployed. And I just want to, we got to see how you're going to do. I didn't even make it 2 weeks. And my Marines were like, hey, we see these things. These are in your blind spot. And it became evident that if I did deploy again, I was either going to get myself killed and or get someone else killed. And so at that point, it was, I accepted the recommendation to be combat medically retired. And so was retired, went to Colorado for a little while, came back to Texas. And then when I got to Texas, I knew that I had to do something. I knew that it had to be extensive outpatient therapy, something to that level, because otherwise I was going to become a statistic. So I'm lucky that from my childhood, I just don't have a don't quit attitude, I guess. I'm very resilient. I can take a lot of punishment. I know how to embrace the suck, if you will, what we said in the military. Yeah, that's what started the process. Is I was combat medically retired and I was doing annual checkups, and they told me, hey, we need you to go see a psychiatrist. I happened to be at the right place at the right time, and they were like, hey, we want you to go see this private therapist. And that's where the real journey began, and that's who actually saved my life.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing some of your journey, and thank you for your service and also using your voice to be here to share, because I just want to, before we get deeper, acknowledge the resilience and the courage that it takes to even be vulnerable enough to share your story, because it would be so easy to isolate and to just, not revisit it by talking about it. But you guys taking the time to come here and to share it, and not only just share it with me and Jeremiah, but be willing to put it out there to help others. I just want to acknowledge the courage that takes, and thank you both, and that we don't take it lightly, that we want to hold your stories with the honor that they deserve. So thank you both. And with that, I'd love to hand it over to Jeremiah.
Yeah. Thank you, Cristabelle. Yeah, I want to echo that. Yeah. I'm very moved that you guys are here and willing to share, and I'm just here to listen, and I just want to know more. I wanted to ask about, we know the military as it stands right now while I'm in it, and I'm sure the time before me when you guys were in the military, mental health wasn't a big conversation topic. So when it came to these things that you have been through, how did you navigate? What emotions? I want to know, what emotions did you have to navigate that weren't on the table for everybody to see while you were dealing with everything? I'll start with you, Vinny.
I'll take a shot at this one because I think you hit something there that I think that me and Scotty both kind of said, but I just want to bring it to the forefront. We want to identify emotions that we haven't channeled with. I think for me that comes in on the healing. I know during this phase in the TBI, the emotions that I had to deal with every day was anger and hate and aggression. That was the biggest one, and for me, learning how to control those things because it was affecting me in my daily work. It was affecting me on my deployments. I'm starting to look at my soldiers as causing the frustration, and I'm losing my temperaments and my cool as a leader, right? As a leader, you want to be stern but not punitive. And for me, in that phase, when I got diagnosed, it was anger, it was hate, it was frustration, it was fear. And now I'm recognizing it through all these years later, it was fear that I could no longer be a soldier, fear that I could no longer do my job under combat, fear that I couldn't lead in these capacities. Um, that was huge for me, learning how to navigate that. As my journey has progressed, the feelings that kind of you were sitting on, Jeremiah, that I haven't learned how to understand are slowing down. That it's okay to be in that space, and that for me is vulnerability. That's the feelings that I'm working through now, feelings that I've never had in my life during my time in active duty, during my time in service. And I don't know, everyone's different, but that fear and that anger, that was my fuel. That kept me going. Nothing like a good old fashioned cup of hate in the morning to get you rolling. Like that, you want some stuff done, get you some hate in the morning, it'll get you rolling. But as life has progressed, those feelings are there, but they can't control my day. So now it's understanding that it's okay to slow down. It's okay to process these things. It's okay to show the vulnerability. It's doesn't make you any weaker or make you weak whatsoever to express these emotions.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Vinny. That's very powerful.
I hope that kind of answers. Like I think is that I'm not really for sure. Like in that phase in the beginning, it's fear, it's hate, it's anger, right? It's nothing but leaning back into it. I had some traumatic things happen in my life, and some of my brothers and sisters told me that they were able to go on because of that hate, because of that fear, because of that anger. It's a huge motivation, right? So I hope that kind of answers that.
Oh yeah, that was an excellent answer. You're actively I'm actively digesting what you're saying and reflecting as you're talking. So
Okay.
yeah. Scotty, how about?
Jeremiah, can you repeat the question? Because I was sucked in on Vinny and I just totally forgot the question.
Yeah, we were talking about mental health not being a big concern in the military. What you kind of mentioned anger earlier, but what specific emotions did you have to navigate while you were
Oh,
going through these
okay.
things?
Yeah. So, I mean, in the military, as well as now, I've got a list of symptoms that have since I've joined the traumatic brain injury clinic in March and April this year. But anger was definitely one, like Vinny said, um, and anxiety. I had tiredness and fatigue. I was overwhelmed a lot. So, as a platoon sergeant, when I was active duty, it really wasn't that big of an issue. You've got 20 tasks in a day and you're figuring out like, how can I get 15 of these done? So that wasn't the issue. It was once I was out and once I was retired, you know, uh, I would actively not go anywhere for 2 or 3 days because I'm, you know, um, recovering, if you will, from, the day that I was running tasks to go to the grocery store or whatnot. Fear was another one. I had a lot of fear, and it's interesting because in the Marine Corps, I used to tell my Marines all the time, there's not a 100% solution to anything. We find the 80% solution and we execute. And that 20% is made up in improvising and adapting and overcoming to whatever the situation is. But yet I couldn't take my own advice in civilian sector. And so I got this fear paralysis, if you will, where I wouldn't make a decision because I couldn't find the 100% solution. It was the complete opposite, of what I was teaching my Marines active duty and telling them. And racing thoughts was another one. And for me, the suicidal ideation really didn't start kicking in until after I retired. But that was, that's something that a lot of combat vets deal with, specific to and I can't remember the word. It's survivor's guilt. There it is. So I did have a lot of Marines that did have some suicidal ideations around that, but I didn't have to deal with it until after the fact.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. I just to like highlight what you guys have kind of said, or things that at least where you guys have matched up, was fear being a big thing, anger being a big thing, and then vulnerability. I We talked with some veterans before, and they were mentioning a few of the struggles that uniquely affect brain injury survivors who are veterans. Can you guys kind of talk on the aspect of what you feel is just unique to that community?
I got one. If you want me to take a shot at this, Scottie, you all right with this, brother?
Go ahead, brother.
It's a two-part answer here. And the first one is, and this is kind of a unique one, it's not becoming your diagnosis, but understanding you are different. I remember, and this has come from one of my brothers, I went downrange with this gentleman 2 rotations, and he went back to Afghanistan 2 more times. He's a hero, and he's a hero among so many guys that I've served with. But we had a conversation one day over some veteran challenges, and when he told me, I'm disabled. Like, here was a man I know was a war fighter. I've seen him shoot, move, and communicate. I've seen him move under fire. I've seen him hog the 240 to the hill. I've seen him lay suppressive fire. I've seen him dismount IEDs. I've seen him take IEDs. And now 10, 15 years later, I'm disabled. I can't do this. That was huge for him. And it was him even saying that to me was huge. Recognizing we are not who we were. We are now who we are. That's a hard one. That was a big one for me. So I think that's a unique veteran struggle. And I say that because you go from being a barrel-chested freedom fighter, right? You're running 2 miles, you're doing these things, you're drinking all day, you're hanging all night, you're young and 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and then you go down range or whatever your experience may be, the system takes a toll on you. And now I'm having trouble putting my shoes on. I'm having trouble remembering, don't look too far forward, because if I look far forward, my brain's going to think that's the ground, I'm going to fall. Like, that's where my life is at. I can't sit longer than 10 minutes. I can't stand longer than 10 minutes. I've got to be consistently moving or my pain exacerbates. So for me, accepting where I'm at in life, that was the hard one. But then the big one was outside society. So I'm 44 years old, and I know I got this full head of hair, and this great skin tone here, and all these great things happening, right? I definitely look like I'm got a fit bill of health, right? But if you look at me on paper, that's the farthest thing from the truth. And that is hard, because your children, your wife, society, your mother, your father, people that knew you at one time, they see you in that space. And dad can't take a road trip because dad can't do longer than 45 minutes in the car without flipping out or getting frustrated or my body hurts. What's wrong with dad? So it's really getting the outside society to understand we've been through some unique experiences in life. Our injury, collectively on the TBI, it's not something you can just walk up and see. You don't wear a badge of honor with the TBI, right? You don't walk around and say, I have this. There are things that you're going to notice, from your speech cadence to your thought process, to your sensitivity to light, to the fact that I've been standing here too long, the fact that this presents one way, but it may not present another way. So that was the big one for me, was understanding my injuries and accepting them. And then once I did that, I'm able to adjust my my interaction with the outside world. Because when they're looking at you like nothing's wrong or nothing's going on, some of that cortisol starts to spike. And we all know I love to live in anger, right? So that cortisol spiking, and now I have another frayed relationship because of the way I responded to something. When then I'm understanding, I'm a platoon sergeant, I got this to make happen. I ain't got time for the shenanigans, right? That is our mentality. That's our mind. And that one for me was a big challenge. I think that we also deal with the veteran demographic, is that if you are the GWAT generation, we're a little bit one or two maybe more deployments. We've all had 3 and 4 deployments downrange of this generation, and you have this TBI, and I may look 40, but I feel like I'm 80. That was the big one for me, is understanding my limitations now.
Thank you for sharing that, Vinnie. Scottie, do you have an answer to that question that you'd like to share?
Every time we do this, you're going to have to repeat the question. I'm just telling you right now.
Oh, absolutely. That is
That in
not even
itself,
a
that in
problem.
itself is a traumatic brain injury.
No, that's absolutely okay. That's real, and I love it, so it's fine. Well, we were talking about some struggles that you felt were unique to a brain injury survivor and a veteran.
Mm. So I think it's important first to talk about, Vinny had described something earlier about the process, as we're getting out of the military, and how the word traumatic brain injury was being tossed around. But I think at the time, even myself, the thought was, oh, well, they took shrapnel or they took a round to the head, right? In this process of going through the Resiliency Brain Health Clinic, and I somewhat knew this through my own therapy experience, is how the symptoms of both are almost identical. I don't know if anybody's ever looked at that. They are very, very similar. So my journey started with specific to PTSD. And it was interesting that when I found my therapist now, within a couple of months, I walked in her office, and the first 5 minutes is usually, how are you? How was your, week or 2 weeks or whatever the case was? And as soon as I got in her office, I couldn't wait to ask this question, and I just blurted it out. And I was like, I've had PTSD since I was a kid. And she's like, yes, I knew that day one. And I was like, man, that makes a lot of sense. Like it explained things, So we worked a lot of things underneath, talk therapy, exposure therapy, etc. But the way I came to the traumatic brain injury clinic was that I have worked therapy since 2015, I'm going to say. I took a couple year break in there. And as things were getting better, it blindsided me. I ended up having these involuntary, invasive suicidal ideations. And these weren't suicidal ideations that I'd had when I was active in my therapy and that were more depressive related. These were, I'm walking down the aisle in Kroger's, and out of nowhere, this thought enters my brain. These would come for days, sometimes 2 or 3 days, and I'm beating them back constantly. And I was probably the most fearful I've ever been. I knew I needed this, and I've been working it. I've changed my diet. I'm working on sleep. I'm doing all of this. And I finally mentioned something to my therapist. She started doing research on her end, and she finally sat me down and she's like, I know the answer to the issue. And she's like, you have a traumatic brain injury. And I had the answer, but having the answer doesn't always make you feel all that good. It wasn't until I went through the actual traumatic brain injury clinic where things started changing immensely for me. Almost instantly, it was like, man, I should have done this 20 years ago. They should make everybody do it. And so the research of it really, that's where, for me, if you give me a pen, I have to take it apart, write with it. I have to be able to figure out what this does to use it to its maximum effective, capability, right? And so for me, I have so many Marines that I talk to, and a lot of times the conversations don't have anything to do with what we're talking about here on the podcast. But if a moment presents itself, if that door cracks open and I have an opportunity to plant a seed, if you will, right? Be vulnerable, like Vinny has said. I'm gonna plant a seed. And through that process of going into the traumatic brain injury clinic and getting the help, I realized that through talking with Dr. Eisman, and I call her Doc G, G'day. Number one, they match PTSD and TBI. They match very similar. But the other interesting thing is that now we're learning more about it, specifically like overpressure. And that just there's this theory now that just us the tens of thousands of rounds that we fire in training, that little overpressure that happens in that chamber that's next to our face, right, over however many, every brain's different, every body's different, but that overpressure over X amount of thousands of rounds could create like a small traumatic brain injury, right? And then you add on, well, the grenade range and firing AT4s or firing smalls, or hey, I was next to a 50 cal, and then when you look at it, I'm looking at it now and I'm thinking, man, I absolutely had a traumatic brain injury, but that, um, I couldn't pick one. I couldn't pick a specific one to answer your question. I couldn't pick a specific one other than the involuntary invasive suicidal ideations, because I've walked this journey in therapy and worked it diligently for, 7 years. And it was the one symptom that came out of nowhere as I got healthier that I absolutely couldn't do anything with, and I couldn't fix it by changing diet, stopping drinking, sleeping 8 hours a night, exercise. Like I could not, no matter as much as my soul wanted to fix this issue and my therapist wanted to fix it, it wasn't something that could be fixed until I went to the Resiliency Brain Health Clinic. And I mean, within days, Vinny's shaking his head. Within days, it was like my eyes were open and I was literally crying because I noticed all of a sudden they said the word, hold on a second. They said the word racing. And I thought, man, I haven't had a racing thought because my head's like a constant gerbil. Like, what did I do yesterday? What do I got to do in 5 minutes? What I got to do in 2 days? And it's just this constant thought process, like a gerbil running around in my head. And then I realized everything was just, and it was just peaceful. And I just broke down in the middle of the clinic because, I can't, unless you've been there, I can't tell you how good it feels when you finally get there to that finish line, if you will, and you get that relief. And it's like, man, that's what I've been fighting for. So when I have the opportunity, like Vinny has said, the word vulnerability, and I'm a big proponent, and I love Brene Brown. She's a psychologist, and she talks about the courage of vulnerability. So in moments where I'm with people I don't even know, if I have a chance to tell my story and to give them something, hope, whatever it is, I'm all about it.
I think something that's really cool here that I'm hearing from Scottie's story, I also just recognizing Scottie, is that he was in Ramadi in 2004. I was in Missoula in 2004. As I was saying prior to this, TBI wasn't a thing, right? You got your bell rung, as Scottie said earlier. You took some shrapnel, you're missing a limb. We can see that. I got my bell rung. I get back out on patrol. As the war progressed, the global war on terror, it became a thing in my second rotation, 2007 to 9. They had TBI protocol. So I think it was just unique to bring up that I know for almost a decade, I was being told that it wasn't a real thing. 12 Bravo combat engineer, the guy finds IEDs on patrol, disarms them, blows things up left and right. I pee for plenty. I've been doing this for a decade of my career, and now you're telling me this is not service connected. Like, so there are so many pieces that go into it. So I think the resiliency is huge, because not knocking the system, but sometimes it does feel like it's easier if you just give up, right? It just works out well if you just give up. I know I wasn't going to give up. You can tell me all these things I want, but Scottie, brother, I've had those things where they're in my head. I'm going to go get kinetic real quick. That's not the way you need to be handling this right now, right? Why is that in my head? So I know it was a TBI. So that one's huge, man. I think that's just really cool for meet somebody else who's been in that space in that time frame, because it was very hands-on in 04.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I can only imagine the veterans who are listening to the podcast right now, and they're like, whoa, like these guys relate to me, or they might even reach out like, I need to talk to one of these guys. So
I think that's important, Jeremiah, not to cut you off, but I'm going to forget this if I don't say it. These are the conversations that need to be occurring right here inside the veteran community.
Uh-huh.
It's fun to have conversations about wartime and stuff like that, but there is a systemic problem with inside the veteran community. And these type of things aren't happening for whatever issues, fear, denial, whatever you want to call it. But these type of conversations are so needed. And it's just a matter of being in the right place at the right time and having the courage to say, hey, man, I heard you say this. And, let's talk offline or whatever the case is. So, yeah, as we're getting older, we're only getting older, especially for these GWAT vets. These are the conversations and things that, and anything I may share on here may not directly impact someone, but they may say, you know what, in a conversation with other veterans around a fire, they may say, you know what, man, I remember watching this podcast and this guy said such and such, and they may tell someone else, but I mean, that's the whole purpose, right? I'm not looking for instant feedback or someone to send me an email or say, hey, thank you. I'm just putting back out into the world what I hope to receive, which is grace and love,
100%.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very thankful you guys, again, we've already thanked you for it, but are being just so vulnerable and just being real and even saying things, fear, anger, suicide. These are words that might be danced around as to not, get too deep, but it's like you said, Scottie, this is real and it needs to be heard. So thank you guys again for that. Yeah, so as we talk about moving forward, helping people like persevere, you guys have kind of already touched on your perseverance when confronted with like setbacks. We kind of heard through you, Scottie, as like your time in the clinic. But is there anything that you learned in the service that specifically helped you navigate that journey with brain injury? Were there some benefits to maybe the camaraderie or brotherhood or just things you have went through in the service that actually helped you with that?
Yes. So one of my first platoon commanders, his name was Eric Kapitulik. He left us, went to Force Recon, spent some time there, but he had this saying. He had a lot of sayings. He had one saying, funny. He said only mailman walks because as a grunt unit, we would run these live fire ranges, and after we would get done, we would run. And I'm not talking like a quarter mile. I'm talking miles. And his thought process is that, hey, when that initial attack is over with, you just don't stop because there's going to be a reattack. But he had this saying that he said only the best can get better, right? And his theory, and it got embedded in my brain early in my career that there's always something you can do better, right? There's always something that you can learn. I also love a quote from Frederick Douglass that says, without struggle, there can be no progress. And I take from that kind of what Mark Twain has said. I believe it was Mark Twain, in that good judgment comes from experience, and a lot of that comes from bad judgment. And it's just all a learning experience, right? And so what the Marine Corps, we're the smallest force, we're the smallest funded, right? And I think they kind of do that on purpose. We're the last to know and first to go. So we're disgruntled as it is, right? Like that's what we're known as, especially, you're in the Navy, you're close to us, you know how we are, right? But it's that embracing the suck, right? Like this is going to suck. Like what was one of the sayings from the Marine Corps was pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, right? And those helped me along this journey, like looking back at my military career and being like, okay, I know I've been through X, Y, and Z, right? In combat, in training, whatever the case is. And knowing that I've been through some of the worst and I'm still standing. And it made me resilient, essentially, to know that if I just bear down and just embrace it, like I'm going to get through this. It's not necessarily going to be the easiest thing I've ever done. It may not be pretty, but if I've got to crawl, I'll crawl, and not allowing myself to compare. They say the comparison is a thief of joy. Like, don't compare myself to anybody else in the clinic or around me. Like, my walk and my journey is my journey only. Sometimes I'm being drugged, Sometimes I'm sprinting, but sometimes I'm walking. But yeah, the military, those things definitely I leaned on when I was in the clinic, and they helped me through the process.
I want to make sure I'm hitting the question correctly. Resiliency, what did we learn during our time in service that we kind of pulled over, correct?
Yes.
I'll be honest, I think Scottie hit it. There's nothing this phase of life that can throw me that I haven't handled yet. I mean, that's as simple as that. There is nothing that can be done. I cannot be sleep deprived. Food can't be taken away. I can't lose loved ones. There is nothing that I cannot handle. And how did I get through it then? Well, temperaments, understanding, the only way through it is forward. That's really been one of my guiding principles throughout this phase. I'm not the first person with this injury. I'm not going to be the last. I'm going to make sure that my mark is left here, and I'm going to leave this better than when I arrived. And I've already been broken. Can't break me. I think that was the big one for me.
Amazing. I do want to get this last question out just because I think this is extremely important. Again, you guys have probably already touched on this with everything we've said, but I want to get specific to what hope would you give to a person? Scottie, you talked about talking to people and giving them that hope. What hope would you give to a survivor who feels overwhelmed by the same adversities that you two mentioned today? Maybe other veterans, maybe anybody who's kind of been in a similar situation. What hope can you give to them?
So my therapist, the very first time I saw her, she's like 5'1", petite, but she stands like 6 foot tall to me. But the first time I met her at the end of the initial conversation, she said, "Okay, I want to tell you that this is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. There are going to be days when you cuss me out and you leave and you're going to want to quit and you're not going to be happy." And she's like, "But I'm telling you right now, if you stick this out, on the other side, you're going to be the happiest and the healthiest that you've ever been. For a gunfighter, don't tell me there's 2 guys in a house when there's 12, because that completely changes my tactics. I'm the type of person that I want to know what's coming before it comes. Like, I get a blood draw, I'm watching the needle go on my arm. Like if I can see it coming, and it's more mental, right? Mm-hmm. If I can mentally prepare myself for the obstacle that's ahead, when it gets hard, I'm already in my mind, I'm thinking, I already knew this was coming. Like, I'll get kind of down on myself and self-pity, and then there's that moment where I'm like, "Scottie, you knew this was coming, brother. Like, she told you this was going to suck." And so that's on the therapy side. On the resiliency brain side, the biggest thing out of everything, like all those symptoms that I mentioned earlier, I mentioned racing thoughts, anger, anxiety, fear. I had a fear of public speaking. When I was in college, after thousands of hours of platform instructor, I got a fear somehow. My brain, my injury was manifesting, right? Getting worse. I had a fear of speaking in front of college students. I mean, they're like 18, 19 years old, right? Tiredness, fatigue, overwhelmed, yep. Fear, and invasive, involuntary suicidal ideations. All of those are gone. They haven't been back. So I would say the biggest thing to encapsulate all those is that, and this is what I've been telling my closest friends and the guys that I'm having conversations with to go to this clinic, is that I did not realize the suboptimal level that I was running at. I had no idea. Yep. And I can't, like, it's comparable to doing 10 years of cognitive processing therapy in 2 weeks. I mean, that's how effective it was. There's still days where I can't believe that I'm on this side of it, right? And there's still stuff to be done, right? There's always areas we can improve, but that clinic, I went into that clinic like I was going into a VA program with the smallest of smallest expectations, right? Because then my disappointment is lowered as well, right? And the only thing I wanted in that is I was like, I got to get a handle on these suicidal ideations. That was my only goal in there. And like I said, on that Wednesday, we were doing some eye movement tests, and then someone said racing, and I started crying because I was like, holy cow, like I don't have that gerbil running around in my head anymore. And then as I've progressed past, every now and then someone like one of my closest friends, Jason, lives like 30 minutes from me. He was talking one day. He said tiredness, and I had to write a little note in my phone, and I was like, oh man, that's something I'm not dealing with anymore. And someone else will say some fear, right? I had this, and it's not a fear of going into a house. It's not a fear of being in combat, right? It's a fear that dictates how I was living my life, in that I had this perception that of what's going to go wrong vice what could go right. And so that's how that perfectionist paralysis came into my life. And I was like, oh, I could see that going bad, right? I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to take that step in this relationship with this person, right? Because of all these other things that have happened in my past, right? But man, they've done so much for me. Like I just can't say enough about resiliency. Like if you are a veteran and you are listening to this podcast, I'm telling you right now, it is like nothing you ever have experienced. It's like nothing that you've ever done with the VA, outside the VA. It's individualized. I know there's traumatic brain injury clinics out there, but they're not individualized like this one. You may be doing some of the same therapy as some of the other veterans in the program, but you're on your own protocol. And it's holistic. I mean, it's from, they're going to take a full metabolic panel on you, and they're looking for the inflammation that you're putting in your body, because that inflammation that you're putting in your body, either whether it be alcohol, food, etc., that's also affecting your brain, right? So they're going to do a full metabolic panel. They're going to look at your diet. They're going to make some changes to it. And then you're going to get into your therapies, your vestibular therapies and whatnot, depending upon your individual injuries. You're going to do IV treatments and, sauna, exercise. A lot of the exercise that we're doing is just understanding like how to do the exercises correctly, which I know men right now are watching this and they're like, man, I know I lift weights, right? And I thought I did too. And then I was like, oh, wow, I'm doing this completely wrong, And then stretching, like we're doing stretching things. Look, I'm almost 50, right? I'm stretching every day, and I was learning new stretches. And so, man, my hat's off to every single person over there at Resiliency. And if you're a veteran and you have the opportunity, throw fear out the window. I mean, we've jumped out of planes. We've been in combat. Like, if you can go to combat and do that, trust me, they're going to treat you like you're treated like family. Vinnie's shaking his head. He knows this. They treat you like family. You feel like family. And there is absolutely no way, if you go into that program and you give it your all for 2 weeks, there's absolutely no way you come out of that program and not have and not improve. It can't happen.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Scottie. And for those listening, you might remember Dr. Michelle Eisenman. She's been on the podcast. She is a founding board member of Hope Survives, and she's a functional neurologist that works there. And so Dr. Eisenman's who connected us with Scottie and Vinnie. And if you heard, it was earlier in this season, a couple months ago, we had her on the podcast, and she talked about how she treats veterans as well as civilians. And so we're so thankful. So that's for those who are listening, what he's talking about, the type of program that views metabolic stuff, is functional neurology. And that's something that we've talked about quite frequently here on Hope Survives podcast, but just to give you a little bit of perspective there. So, all right, to close this out here, Vinnie, we want our final words of hope. What would you share with us here?
Final words of hope. Don't isolate. We are a pack animal. If you separate from the herd, you die. Part of TBI, part of all these great things is isolation. Getting out there, gaining community, to understand how many people truly support you, to understand that Resiliency Brain Clinic, Hope Survives podcast, Veterans Community Project, 4 individuals here just care about you. I myself came upon these life-changing therapies in this organization by connecting with Defenders of Freedom. another great nonprofit. I just named 5 nonprofits that care about you. Community, get out there, don't isolate. That's the key.
We couldn't say it better, Vinnie. Thank you so much. Jeremiah, are there any closing words you would like to share?
No, just thank you for your time. Just the time that you guys even put in today probably is going to have a lot of impact. You probably save lives today. You probably save marriages. You probably save relationships. So I just want to thank you for your time, and then just thank you for your service. Just the reason that I can serve today is because you guys have already been out there. So thank you for that. That's all.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for sharing your stories. And for those listening, thank you for being here. As always, you can email us hi@hopesurvives.org. If anything came up while you were listening to this, if you have questions for Scottie or Vinnie or in general about brain injury or veterans with brain injury or anything, please email us. We would pass any messages along that you would like to share. So thank you for being here. This is Hope Survives Podcast, and we want you to know you're not alone. Thanks for tuning in to Hope Survives Podcast. Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned, and would love for you to consider leaving us a rating or review. Check out hopesurvives.org for more. We'll see you next time, and remember, there is always hope.